Alright, so I guess the little bit of glare is going to be shining on my face. I decided maybe I will be doing a weekend reading of this book, and I will also I will post the link and I'll play this in the background. It's Irish and instrumental traditional music. So you could get more into the, maybe, I don't know. So we're talking about Newgrange, and basically, I don't know, you guys can look up Newgrange. Hold on a minute. There, that's better. Had it a little bit too loud. So, this place, Newgrange, how much do you know about it? You might have read in the newspapers of this great and mysterious edifice under the ground in County Meath. It's not far in from the coast, and it's northwest of Dublin by about 30 miles or so. I've been there myself, and it's a mighty place. In rich land on a hill above the River Boyne. And this is a storyteller telling about it. A kind woman who lives on the hillside took me into what she called our cave. She lit a stub of a candle, and the flame was enough to display great wonders to me. This marvelous immortal structure was built 5,000 years before Stonehenge in England, before the pyramids of Egypt. Every person in the world should visit it, because it tells us how amazing were the ancestors of man. It's a very inspiring place, and while I was there, I came to consider a great deal about it and the person who built it, and this story entered my mind. Oh, okay, so I believe the author has actually seen Newgrange, and he's... Wow. That must be it. The architect of Newgrange was a young man, possessed of a tall and thin physique, above which his wild head of tawny hair looked like a tree on fire. His deep-set eyes frightened the children, and his manner took no account of courtesy, which is to say that he treated people abruptly. Until the events occurred that I'm about to relate to you, he spent much of his life in silence, speaking only when spoken to, never offering friendship, and generally avoiding the burden of conviviality. His was a life of the aloof. If we wish to excuse somebody for being like that, we say, they're shy, and I do believe he was a shy child and grew up a shy young man. At one stage of his life, this remote and strange individual began to invest a deep interest in the observation of stone. And by stone, I mean those rocks I've described to you that were cast down the mountains when the ice melted. To most people, a stone is a stone, nothing more and nothing less than a rock. This young man grew to love stone the way farmers love cattle, the way women love children, the way boys love pretty girls, the way the waves love the shore. To him, stone seemed to speak. He didn't hear her voice, but he understood it just the same, because deep in his mind a picture formed of the world as it must have been long ago, before there were trees with leaves or animals with fur. Stone brought the past to him and brought him to the past. Now the man's people, who commanded the hill of Newgrange, they lived handsomely. The land of rich brown clay was left behind 10,000 years ago, a great wide silt after the ice melted. In Ireland, they found a good and pleasant home. Hazel and rowan trees already covered the plains and grew down the mountainsides into the valleys. Wide, slow rivers took the voyagers in from the coast on the logs of the simple rafts. And they discovered if they cleared the trees, they could settle almost anywhere because the earth was so easy to cultivate. In the far-off days, everyone on such a hillside labored hard. From the age a child could lift or scrabble to the oldest man or woman able to drag or push, they hauled and parted and combed the clay. The soil they tilled was warm and deep and full of different colors. honey or red gold or mahogany. Scatter seeds there, and something always grew. Yet, for all their prosperity and for all their good fortune, they made slow progress in life, because they hadn't yet discovered anything better to work with than stone. They depended upon it for weapons, tools, and they handled it well. In their hands, stone made stone. Using stone tools, they hammered out new stone implements, knives, chisels, copied from shards of stone that they found among the occasional little beaches of shale on the banks of the river. They also established what you might call local factories. There were places to which they hauled the rocks they found strewn in the countryside. Every stone in the world has a cutting point, a place on the stone where the cleanest break may be achieved. The men who made the weapons knew how to find the fault line, how to split a stone as neatly as a slice, and every stone mason has understood since the gods were born, when you add edge to weight, your cutting power doubles. And once they mastered how to use it, nothing resisted their stone. The skull of a foal, the neck of a beast, the crest of a slope, everything yielded to it. That is how a young man with wild tawny hair and the deep-set eyes first came to such a closeness with stone. He found that he had a gift for using it expertly. He understood economy, how to get strong results from controlled circumstances. His weapons and tools seemed neater, more efficient, more powerful than anyone else's because he realized no dagger needed to be too long, no axe too heavy. A weapon's power only springs to life in the hands of its user, and those he made for himself always had perfect balance. His gift for stone saved the young man's life once. One day, breaking branches in the trees where the forest had been forced back from the hill of New Grange, he heard a noise. He looked up and saw a bear glaring at him. She probably had cubs nearby, because bears, by and large, tend to leave people alone unless they fear for the young. He had no intention of troubling the creature, but the bear didn't know that. On the ground near his feet, his bare toes felt a heavy rock shard, long as a short sword. I still have problems with S words, sorry. He stood very still, watching the bear carefully. With a great roar, she rushed toward him. He bent swiftly, snatched up the shard, and drove the stony spike high into the bear's throat. The force of his thrust almost broke his hand, but he had enough strength to trust the weapon. He saw blood on the stone, not much, enough to tell him he had wounded the animal. The bear stepped back and collected herself to attack again. The young man lunged forward, this time roaring wildly. Where is it? The bear recoiled farther, and the young man struck again and again, till the bear killed over backwards. He jumped on her and hammered the shard into her neck over and over until she was dead. The people of New Grange had their own governments, elders and eldresses who passed the laws and made decisions that regulated life on the hillside. They addressed all spiritual matters, too, such as when, why, and how to make sacrifices to the gods. One year, as the leaves turned gold, the elders held a special meeting. The harvest again had been abundant. The chief elder, his face very serious, said, "We must build something we will be remembered for. We must build a structure that will not only respect our forefathers, but will also preserve the spirit of our people." A great meeting was called, to which almost everyone on the hillside came. The arguments grew so heated they had to convene again and again and again. To and fro the discussion raged. What will constitute an eternal honor, and how is it to be done? I've said that almost everyone on the hillside attended. One voice didn't speak. A wild young man stayed away. Nobody uttered surprise at his absence, and many expressed relief. They always found him a little odd. He didn't say much to many, because they'd begun to fear him. With good reason. One day, he had suddenly openly killed 2 men. His status as a warrior may have placed him above punishment, but his deed caused the hillside fear. Folk evaded him, didn't meet his eyes, chose not to work alongside him. What they didn't know, and he never told them, was the reason he had killed the 2 men. The day after the bear's death, the young man had grown despondent with remorse. He couldn't endure the fact that when he killed the bear, he'd also orphaned her cubs. He took off into the forest to bring them back and try to rear them. He never found them. 3, 4, 5 days he searched, checking lairs, taking risks, but no cubs. When he returned to New Grange, he came upon a commotion. A bunch of lesser men had found the cubs, killed one, and were burning the second cub on the spit. The young man raced up the hill, arrived as a squealing cub, 2 months old, shuddered and died, blood oozing from its eyes, its fur scorched black. He killed the man who was holding the cub. With an axe lying nearby, he split the fellow diagonally from shoulder to hip and pounded a hole in the man's forehead. First cub was already being skinned by one of the men, a nice fur cap for the winner. He killed him too, this time not even bothering with attacking the body. He just split the man's head wide open. Bystanders, who a minute earlier had been laughing at the sport with the bear cubs, scattered like chaff in the wind. From that moment, everyone avoided the young man. While he roamed, he looked at everything he saw in the world and tried to imagine its origins. That was how he came to love stone. Everywhere he went, he scrutinized some new boulder or slab, relishing the sight and bulk and feel of it. Who's to say he didn't now and then run his tongue over a rock and taste one of life's joy? A fresh little pool of rainwater in the hollow of a crag immediately after a shower. Came the day of the last big meeting. No matter what the wild young man's reputation, regardless of how rough or dangerous or foolish he was generally thought to be, a number of elders believed in him and began to raise his name as the man for the job. He might seem unsteady at times, perhaps a touch mad, and his rages might cause havoc, but the elders perceived in him potential of a great doer as well as a dreamer. The chief elder believed him the best weapon maker, the most intelligent of the farmers, and something of a visionary, and so he persuaded him to come to the final meeting. This was supposed to be the day of decision. From early afternoon, people began to assemble in the longhouse. A great wide fire lit the darkness of the windowless chamber. Men, women, and children squatted on skins scattered across the mud floor. The chief elder spoke first. He announced, though he wanted to hear further argument, he hoped they would now decide as to how, what, and where they would build this great eternal monument. So far, all they agreed was that they should use wood. Of course, little do you know, wood probably wouldn't last nearly as long. The wild man come in late and stood near the door. He kept his head down, looked at no one. The chief elder, who had personally invited him and asked for his views, called him forward. He came up to where the elder stood, coughed to clear his throat, and spoke. He began by addressing the sacredness of the mighty project. They claimed that they wished nothing less than the finest possible memorial. Our dead, he said, will always be with us. Therefore, we must honor them with something that will always be there. And we can't say that of wood. Wood doesn't last. Yes, wood was beautiful. The child knew that, but wood rotted. Maggots ate into the wood and the rain did the rest. There's only one thing that lasts, he said, and that is stone. He held out the fingers of one hand and counted. 1, stone was magnificent in appearance. 2, it came from the ancient world. 3, it would last to the end of time. 4, it could be shaped. 5, it would accept carved messages of respect and belief. He closed his mouth and sat down on the floor. People stared at the wild young man. They turned to each other, dumb with wonder, their faces reflecting unasked questions. And then, from every corner, in the safety of their numbers, voices began to attack him. What did he know? How could he be so foolish, so impractical? They could easily ferry wood, but how could anyone transport stone? Beneath each complaint and accusation lay an ignoble question. Who was he? A moody killer, to tell them where they're wrong. He rose and spoke again. His high-pitched voice sounded something like a girl's, and he looked lean and disturbing. Don't you understand? Stone is unyielding, not unfriendly. The marks we make on it will last forever. What could be more suited to remind us and our children's children of who has gone before? He was speaking to people who had never thought deeply of stone. To them, stone was like air and water, no personality until you do something with it. It lies there in the fields, doing nothing, with badges of moss all over it. What was more was to be said of it, except that it yielded a good axe now and then. The young man had little concern for what Newgrange thought. All he cared about was what he felt and what he wanted to do. The force of his passion made everyone peer at him. The light from the fire made him look more mysterious. Slamming one fist repeatedly into the palm of the other hand, he made point after point. I sense more things than I can name. I understand more than I can describe. Visions come to me in flashes of light that I can't explain. But all of you all have such feelings. Look for them in your heart. In a voice powerful enough to fight off all comers, he told them that one of life's greatest mysteries lay within stone. No matter how it was approached, whether attacked, caressed, or cut wide open, stone never surrendered the story of its origins. As with ourselves, he said, we don't know where it came from. It must have belonged to the beginning of the world. His listeners shivered. They felt the same uncomfortable wonder as he did. In his passion for stone, he had placed his hand on something inside every one of them, and now he tightened his grip. Sometimes at dawn, sometimes in the dead of night, sometimes when a breeze feathers the waters of the river, we tremble inside, and we wonder what power that we cannot see, but we can feel, guides us. What great spiritual authority governs our lives? That's the force of our ancestors. We mustn't commemorate them with anything that's less than immortal. In the odd silence that followed, the chief elder stepped in and said he proposed to appoint the wild young man as architect. The young man didn't react at all. One of the elders sensed the discomfort among the people and felt that many might think they'd been ridden over roughshod. This man had suave ways, silky voice, and he knew how to persuade folk to his point of view. We shall call him the Silken Elder. He spoke to you, his voice never rose. When he stood conversing, he held hands folded on his stomach, and a little pursed smile always danced on his plump mouth. In fairness, he himself had much distinction. This was the elder that took responsibility for all rituals practiced on the hillside, praising of the rain, the warning of coming storms, and the songs to the sun. If some unusual act of nature, such as lightning or a whirlwind, drove fear through the people, he was the one who uttered smooth words to fight the danger. He was the man who taught Newgrange how to make offerings to the skies, trees, the river, and he worked all this so calmly and soothingly, and many people liked him. This elder was himself a dangerous man. In short, he was a liar, untrustworthy, and shifty man, and insincere. The Silken Elder decided it would be to his advantage to speak for the people. He began to question the young man. What are you going to build? He said. How long will it take? I will create something the world has never seen, something it will always consider extraordinary. The astonishing reply quieted the room somewhat. Even the Silken Elder was taken aback. How do we know you won't abandon the job before it's finished? That insult sent a hiss of wonder through the crowd. The young man looked calmly nowhere and never said a word. Silken Elder tried again. Do you intend to be answerable at all? These folks, this room, these are your people. Will you answer them? To your elders? To anyone? Our young man never moved, never smoked. The questions drew none of his blood. He knew enough to wait. The young architect of Newgrange turned around, walked across to where the Silken Elder stood. 6 inches from Silken Elder's face, he shone the beam of his eyes straight at the man, like two boxers that glared at each other for a long moment. I can understand why you might wish to disclose your plans in detail, but it isn't enough to hear your love of stone. You refuse to tell us anything else. Therefore, to protect ourselves in case you fail us on such an important enterprise, we should declare ourselves entitled to recompense. A blood oath. Recompense was the payment for failure to deliver on a vow, and it guaranteed a slow, humiliating death. First, the offender was pegged out like a hide to the hillside. There he lay for 24 hours. At noon on the next day, a warrior came and cut off the offender's right arm at the shoulder. On the third day at noon, the left arm. Slaves staunched the blood with mud, leaves, and skins to prevent the offender bleeding mercifully to death. On the fourth day at noon, the warriors cut off the right leg. At the fifth noon, the left. On the 6th day at noon, they prized out his eyes, sliced off his ears, pulled out his tongue, and on the 7th day they filleted his body like butchers. Some weeks later, when the wind and rain had washed all the flesh from the skeleton, the whitening bones would be collected by the lowest bondswoman on the hillside and cast out into the countryside for the wild animals to gnaw. The architect had seen the recompense more than once. He had even been called upon to participate in it. At last he nodded slowly. I understand. But if you, all of you, eventually agree that I've accomplished a satisfactory and eternal commemoration, then I will take your elder's robe and you'll pay the recompense. A soft roar came up from the people. This young man knew the laws of Newgrange. In the shocked house, the silken elder had no choice. I agree. Because apparently it says a person threatened with a recompense had the right to turn it on his challenger, even an elder. What can you tell us about how long? I will tell you nothing, interrupted the architect, and he left the longhouse abruptly. From that moment, one September day, 50 centuries ago, the architect began to plan a great white circular building on the hillside at Newgrange above the River Boyne. From that moment he knew the silken elder would plot every day to cause his downfall and wreck his project. Because anytime a great man tries to do a wonderful thing, lesser men will try to stop him. That is one of the laws of life. And I believe I will end there for now because this is longer than I had hoped. I think my next section, I'm going to really get into the heart of this architect building Newgrange, and it's just going to be kind of random, so it'll just be kind of, and I'll maybe not have the music on as much, I don't know, kind of new to doing this literary stuff. Other than that, yeah, just stay tuned. I'm going to put out a video tomorrow, and I'm going to try to keep this at a relatively, if I could, I'd like to keep these to like 15 minutes or 20 minutes at tops, but I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully this was enjoyable.